Hey everybody, this is Ryan McClanahan with historythroughcards.com. Hope you're all doing very well today. So while I was going through the list of potential Hall of Famers for the class of 2024 for Canton, I came across the name Ralph Hay, and this is actually a really interesting name. If you guys are not familiar with Ralph Hay, don't worry about it. This is why I started my channel. Ralph Hay is actually the guy who invented professional football. He got 11 owners together, and they signed contracts in his showroom. He was a Hupmobile salesman. He got these guys together to sign the first official professional contracts in the early NFL. And so I'm actually surprised that he was never inducted as early as 1963. But again, to Doubleday has never been inducted into Cooperstown either, who is somebody I don't think should be inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame. A different story, but Doubleday did not found baseball. He did not invent baseball, whereas Ralph Hay actually did. Um, the origins of the professional game can, I think, be traced to Canton, Ohio. I think there's some speculation that it actually was invented or founded somewhere else. I'll have to look into that a little bit closer. But I did find a couple of articles that I thought were really interesting, and they really kind of detail what is going on in the early days of the NFL. Very precarious, uh, really something that could have gone either way. And what I mean by that is that um, there's no guarantee that professional football was going to last in the early days of the league. And I think this kind of demonstrates that. So let me get on to these articles and I'll meet you on the flip side. This is from the Akron Beacon Journal, December 28th, 1920. Professional football made since New York had squint at the game by Jack Gibbons. There's an old saying referring to sports that until New York looks with favor upon your game, well, you simply ain't there. Sell your idea to fans and cities of New York and you are made. Let Chicago, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, or any other city see your game and admit that it's fine, yet it simply doesn't seem to prove anything. This is a creed well known to promoters and best exemplified by the present popularity of boxing since the game opened in New York. What we are getting around to is professional football and its recent debut in New York. Gotham saw the game and liked it. To our way of thinking, professional football is now practically made. Conservative New York papers have in the past threw up their hands in horror at the very mention of professional football. The professional football scout, as a gentleman of the profession who traveled at night with a full kit, lacking only the customary blackjack. They shuddered at the havoc the game would cause to the ideals and traditions of the college man. Yet when Akron, Cleveland, and other cities that knew the sport shouted back, "'Tain't so," wise old Gotham turned a deaf ear. New York saw this new sport, and now what a different squawk they made. What Ohio cities have been saying for years, that there is a field for both professional and college football. New York is now telling the world as though they made a wonderful discovery. The big bird can now see possibilities of a professional football league being organized. Of course, being New York is to be a party to this league with other cities. The game must be placed on a high standard in order to make it a major sport. Yet after sitting back and seeing the merry old mess the big towns made of a Major League Baseball, Canton, Akron, Dayton, and a few others need not hesitate in extending a challenge to our major league cities, is asking them any better than it is now. If they mean to cleanse it like they have baseball. The game could be played on a roulette wheel. When Jim Thorpe took his Canton Bulldog team to New York and Philadelphia, he planted the seed for the sport to flourish in large cities. Judging from the reception accorded the game, the time is not far when the sport of the paid gritters will be taken away from this section of the country. Akron, Canton, and Dayton could not compete with New York, Philadelphia, and Chicago because of the money the large cities could afford to spend on the game. So after years of leadership, Akron, Canton, and Dayton will be forced into the minor leagues of professional football. It's simply a case that the largest cities will pay fortunes on the game and state in such an extravagant manner that we couldn't afford to compete. All of this may not happen in a year, but it's surely coming. There's only ourselves to blame. We begged New York for years to look upon our sport. Now they are going to take it away from us. This is from the Evening Review, December 29th, 1920, East Liverpool, Ohio. Will continue Canton squad. Ralph Hay announces plans for pro sport next season. Business conditions and other affairs favorable. Canton will have professional football in 1921, and the clerical head of the organization will be Ralph Hay, who in 1919-20 was associated with James Francis Thorpe in the handling of the Bulldog outfit, which failed to retain the national championship. Hay Monday announced tentative plans for the 1921 campaign, in which he hopes to see the local team regain the Open Championship. He will not be associated with Thorpe, who has decided to move on to other fields. Rumor having it that he will make headquarters either in Chicago, Cleveland, or New York. Next Monday in Canton, a conference is to be held between Hay and John Cupid Black, a famous Yale player, now a resident of New York. Black will come to Canton at the request of Hay, who intends making him a proposition to take over the playing affairs of the Canton 11. But if Black doesn't decide to act, Canton will deal for Patty Driscoll, famous Northwestern backfielder who has been playing with professional 11s of Chicago during the last two campaigns. Black captained the Yale 11 in 1915, and he is an All-American man. Before the opening of the 1920 campaign, professional football backers attempted to link Black with Massillon. Westerners did not like the idea of backing a team, though they rated Black highly. As a result of that informal affair, Hay came in touch with the ex-Yale star, who showed an inclination to consider a deal, and it is from this reason that the Cantonian will have the New Yorker here next week. The reopening of professional football affairs by Hay came somewhat unexpectedly, for several weeks ago he announced he had decided to close the books for all time. Since then, however, certain deals have been put through to make him change his mind, one of the principal ones being the opening of negotiations with Black and also with Driscoll. I believe that Canton will support professional football if the men under contract are handled properly and the real spirit shown, said Hay Monday. It is my purpose to present another aggression of ex-college stars, providing business conditions do not mitigate against the move. Things by that time ought to be cleared up by the powers that be. Black of Yale and Driscoll of Northwestern are the two players being considered as managerial timber by Canton. Each is a born leader. Black led Yale in 1915 as a guard. Driscoll captained Northwestern in 1917 as a back try. In conclusion, Hay declares that the next Canton leader will be a disciplinarian. Black, while at Harvard, gave old Eli a most aggressive 11. Black himself is a true-born fighter, and he was a Stonewall in the Blue Line for 3 seasons. This is from the Akron Beacon Journal, Akron, Ohio, December 5th, 1922. Heavy losses suffered by pro club owners this year. Professional football has been a bust this season. Financially, we speak of. Regardless of the optimistic spirit maintained by club owners, there's very few of them who right now aren't out in the cold holding the bag. Akron owners confidentially admit that it's cost them money to put a team on the field this season. Canton is a loser. Ralph Hay of Canton said not long ago that this was his last season in professional football, giving as his reason a heavy financial loss. Hay's retirement, however, isn't taken seriously at this time. Buffalo, who always wanted games at home in other years, was quite content to travel this season. Up in Chicago, they tell us the two Chicago teams are on the nut, particularly the Cardinals. Reports are that Milwaukee unloaded several stars in order to help defray expenses. Dayton and Toledo's owners are said to be in for heavy loss. Both these teams quit the field several weeks ago. Thorpe's team shows profit. Jim Thorpe's Indians were said to be showing a profit for the owners, but it's noticeable that the team hasn't played much of late. This is all hearsay, not having the privilege of going over every club's books, but the reports come from club owners who are in position to know. Players of several clubs played one or more games free to help the owners get off the quote unquote nut. With the season now closed, it should be a fine time to hold a post mortem to discover reasons for the financial losses of this season. It happens, however, that we have sat in on several post mortems and departed with the club owners no wiser than when the discussion started. So this is really interesting. First, there is a really great movie called Leatherheads with George Clooney, and if you guys haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. I like it quite often because it kind of shows you how football was back in the 1920s, and it was competing directly with college football, which for a lot of teams just couldn't compete with college football, and they folded just as quickly as they sprang up. And we see this here in these articles as well. When it comes to Ralph Hay, he's not on any cards. There are no cards of football players for the most part from the 1920s. There are some other uh, team sets, but they are few and far between. So under Ralph Hay, the Canton Bulldogs won the 1922 and 1923 championships, and from 1921 to 1923, they won 25 straight games and they tied three, which I believe is a NFL record. So this is really fascinating because it shows you just how financially insecure the early days of the football league is, and it kind of reminds me of the Negro leagues where we don't have a lot of box scores for certain players, and a lot of these players sign a contract for their team only to be let go, dropped, the team actually folding, which happened quite often. And you see this in a really great movie called Leatherheads with George Clooney, where they're showing you that the teams are folding just as they start. And so, uh, at this point in time, football as a professional sport is really shaky. And Ralph Hay is kind of in the middle of this. And he actually bought the team from Jack Cusack. Well, Jack Cusack was, I think, he was really one of the founders of the Canton Bulldogs, which I think go back to 1903. Jack Cusack won championships in 1915, 1916, and 1917, and he sold the Bulldogs to Ralph Hay in 1919, and he actually ends up in the oil industry, and that's where he made his money. And he passed away in 1967, and a lot of people they know the name Jack Cusack, and I think Jack Cusack and Ralph Hay should both be in the Hall of Fame for being early pioneers of the sport of football. And for some reason, Jack Cusack, his name has really been only mentioned by those who actually study the sport and they know the history of it. While Ralph Hay, he has actually been on the list for enshrinement, but it just hasn't happened. So this is again a really interesting series of articles that kind of show you where football was compared to what it is now, and really football didn't really become the sport that we know of today until about 1946 or so, when TV first hit the airwaves, if you will. It is because of the television that football gained immense popularity in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, and today. So, guys, thank you so much for stopping by. I really appreciate it. Let me know what you think about Jack Cusack or Ralph Hay, if both of these guys should get in the Hall of Fame. And if you know any cards or um, panoramics, if you will, team composites that Ralph Hay could be on, let me know because I'm not really aware of any. I'm pretty sure he's on something. I just haven't come across it. Whereas Jack Cusack is on the 1912 Canton Bulldogs team composite or team issue. I want to say that he also has a connection, or Jack Cusack has a connection with the Massillon Tigers. It's another really famous ball club. And at some point, I'll be talking about them as well. So, again, guys, thank you so much. I greatly appreciate it as always, and I will talk to you later. Bye.